Hi folks, I'm Sheila and welcome to Counsellor Convos. Let's get stuck in. Hi folks, welcome to another episode of Counsellor Convos. For those that don't know me, I'm Sheila McMahon. I'm a registered mental health counsellor and I am delighted to be joined with Debbie Williams. Hello Debbie.
Hi there, Sheila.
Good stuff. Debbie, feel free to introduce yourself in whatever way you feel comfortable to do so.
Okay, well, I'm Debbie Williams. I'm an NLP trainer. I'm also a hypnotherapist. I've been doing this for, probably got involved 30 years ago, more so to sort myself out. And then for the last 24 years, I've sort of worked alongside Dr. Richard Bandler and Paul McKenna. Also did a lot of training with Tony Robbins. So very much into solution-focused stuff. That doesn't mean to say we don't deal with trauma, but I find with NLP, it's quite a powerful, ethical way to help people let go of stuff. And yeah, it's I didn't decide I was going to do this. With my coaching clients, I invite them to write, I write it in my diary and I invite them to write this phrase somewhere that they can see all the time, which is, I wonder what miracles will happen this week. Now, even if their conscious mind is arguing with it, miracles, don't believe in this, miracle nonsense. Nah, I'm not buying into that woo-woo miracle thing. But their unconscious is hearing miracle, miracle, miracle.
Yeah.
Then the weird stuff happens that, there's a £10 note there. Miracle, coincidence, don't care. I'll have that. Nobody's around. Or, or a little robin suddenly flies and perches itself close to you and you're lost in that moment. And so, being open to miracles happening, I find that I've done this for years and I didn't build my business for the first 15 years. It was like Paul McKenna because I was in the right place at the right time.
Okay. How did that happen actually, Debbie, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I went on an NLP training and my friend Michelle Lockney, she was on that. I actually had a clothes shop in the city centre. She landed like a PA job for Paul McKenna. They did a year-long program and I was very much interested in this. So I went on the year-long program, which cost a ridiculous amount of money.
Okay.
Like 3,500 years ago. And I did manage to get a grant from the council or the Birmingham Business Link, that sort of area. I got a grant for 1,000 and yeah, I did that. And then afterwards, they decided to bring Richard Bandler over to do practitioners and master practitioners. And I was invited to go back as an assistant. And then my friend Michelle Shelley, she said to me, you're a hypnotherapist, aren't you? Paul's asked, because you're in the Midlands area, we have lots of people inquiring, can we send people to you? And I thought, well, yeah, all right. I was like nonchalant about it. And interestingly enough, most people who came had been to at least 3 other hypnotherapists, and then they wanted to work with Paul, and then they were deflected to me. And it certainly sharpens your skills up. I have I'm a bit OCD, and if somebody comes in, I would think afterwards, what did I miss? What did I not notice? What could I have done better? And I had my own mastermind of Stephen Brooks, who I did my initial training with in hypnotherapy, Richard Bandler. I had a whole team there. And sometimes a client would come in and they told me it was anxiety. So I'd watched every video I'd got on, sort of anxiety and all prepared. And they sit in front of you and tell you a completely different story. And you think, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
I love your honesty, Debbie.
Yeah, but then I'd say to my team, help, and I just listen, take notes, and then all of a sudden, we can do this. We can do, and so, and weirdly, people would come in like 3s or 5s of a particular issue, and you'd get an education of how to work with that issue quite successfully, and then I stopped fearing seeing clients, and because when I mentor new hypnotherapists, sometimes they're like, and I think,
what do you think? Like if we focus a bit on the hypnotherapy, why do you think some people are a bit wary of it?
they don't understand it. And in my practice, I tend to say to people the first session, if you can afford it, come for what I call a double breakthrough session.
Yeah.
And I will use sort of NLP tools and techniques. We'll measure the problem out of 100, and usually it's at least 90 plus.
Mm,
If we can get it down to, often we can get it that it's gone or it feels like it's 20% or 40%, then that builds rapport and trust. And then I usually say, look, I'm going to do a short hypnosis that will cover what we've done here. So every time you listen to it, it'll reinforce the change going in the right direction.
yeah.
And you don't have to go into trance here because it's a protection mechanism when people are fearful of it. Because after all, you don't want me to plant suggestions that you're going to cluck like a chicken or anything like that, which
It
I've
mightn't
never.
go down well, Debbie.
No, no. And they usually laugh at that. And because I give
Yeah.
them permission that they can even sit with their eyes open if they want. And I said, and the
Okay.
thing is, it's going to be recorded. And
Yeah.
what you'll find is sometimes people have to learn how to go into trance. So sometimes it'll be the second or third time you'll listen to it, and then you'll suddenly think, you'll wake up at the end and you think, oh, where did I go? Where did I go?
Ah,
And it's the same thing when you drive from A to B and you arrive and you think, oh, I don't remember the journey.
yes.
But if somebody stepped out in front of you, your foot will be on the brake in a nanosecond. So your unconscious is looking out for you. So I try and make people
Mm.
feel reassured that, I'm not
Mm.
going to, as soon as they walk in, sleep.
Sleep, you're under my spell. You're not a witch, in other words, Debbie.
No, no.
Okay, good stuff. Now, folks, just to let you know that how I met Debbie was on an aeroplane. And actually, beforehand, Debbie and I were sitting in where you're waiting, waiting area beforehand. And we were both did not know each other, but we were both smiling at two girls who were obviously doing an Instagram video who didn't care who was watching and they were sticking out their boobs and their asses and all of that. And I was very amused by this and actually quite I thought it was great the way that they didn't care what other people thought. And I could see Debbie across from me and she was smiling as well. And that made me smile even more. And it turns out that we end up sitting beside each other on the plane. And that was it, Debbie. You talked about the journey. It was over the flash. You and I. Oh my God, talk about chemistry.
Yeah, it was because I'd just been in Dublin with Paul McKenna because he'd done a show in Dunleary, and
Yeah.
I was sat. My face is very expressive. I,
And
I
so was
couldn't
mine.
I
Yeah.
couldn't be a poker player, but I was kind of like watching them and and because you've done comedy, I've not done as much as you, but I did get through to the regional final of Bachelor's Cup of Soup Extra competition.
Fantastic stuff. Well done, Debbie.
And we were saying, if we'd have known each other
Yeah.
before, we'd have done a spoof next to them. And I was like,
Oh,
I'm
oh,
sticking out.
absolutely, absolutely. Exactly that. I know. For those that are hearing this audio, Deborah's literally grabbed her boobs and just shoved them upright. I can't find mine. Mine are down by my ankle somewhere. I've given
Well, my over shoulder boulder holder keeps them in place.
I love it. I love it, Debbie. So I love people's stories. So feel free to share only what you're comfortable to share. Because you mentioned about that you got into this because kind of sort your own self out. Do you mind saying a bit about that, Debbie? Only if you're comfortable to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I was too mean to pay a therapist. But behind that, I didn't have the self-esteem to think I was worthy of paying a therapist. And so
Okay.
it's interesting when clients come and they pay my fee and they tell me they have no self-esteem. And I says, you do. You've invested in yourself here. You've
Yes.
got more self-esteem. This is just a story.
Yeah.
Um, but I also thought, well, if I can do the training, I can find out how it works and I can
Yeah.
fix myself. And I remember being on a Stephen Brooks course and he'd always ask for volunteers and I'd put
Mm.
my hand up, work on me, I don't care who knows, sort me out, And so I was always like the volunteer. And then at the end of the year, I was thinking, oh, I don't really think I want to be a hypnotherapist. But I said to him, you know, I don't think I could be a hypnotherapist because even though I've done a year of this,
Mm,
I don't feel confident that I could help other people. And
okay.
he said it was an unwritten rule that you could come back and do redo the course. So I
Okay.
didn't need any invite. I did another year.
Free? Come back for free. You were in
Yeah.
there, Debbie.
Yeah. And at the end of the second year, I had a huge sort of dental phobia. And
Okay.
at the end of the second year, it was still there, but I got rid of layers. So I got myself to the dentist and oh my God, it's the smell. Woo, I'm out of here. Dealt
Okay.
with that. So layer upon layer. And
Yeah.
the final layer was a needle phobia. And I always remember, and he's become a friend of mine, Peter.
Oh,
We did an exercise on each other, and it was like the end of the second year. And he said to me, he says, you know, with your creative mind and your humor, you'll come up with a solution that'll sort this out just like that, and you'll laugh at it. When he said that, I thought, oh, my critical mind was,
yes.
I've done 2 years. You don't know. Nobody's going to help me. Oh my God. Well, that's it. I'm never ever going to want to see clients because if I can't sort myself out, then I'm just a fraud. And
Oh,
sometimes you
yeah.
go,
And I hear that critic. It's so honest. Thank you
yeah.
for sharing all of this. Yeah, I hear
Yeah.
you.
But 2 days later, the answer came, and I've used this a lot with people with needle
Yeah.
phobias. That there you are, sat sort of in the dentist chair or what have you, and you're looking down, and so the thought is, with the needle, it's only a little prick. I'm sure you've seen one of those before.
Brilliant.
And so from that, I just added to go into visual. For me, I see like a bubbling brook in Wales. So I'm off there. I'm playing this. It's only a little prick, and then I'm asking the dentist. I said, look, let me get myself ready. When I'm ready, I'll put my hand up. And can you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? So I'm
Okay.
overloading the conscious mind. And
Ah.
so I've managed to have, as you can see, teeth from Turkey.
Your lovely teeth, Debbie, wherever you got them from.
Well, there's always a seed of learning because one of the big things that I had and I sort of cured myself was
Wow.
after my wonderful dad died. I only found out that he'd actually adopted me, but I couldn't wish for a nicer dad.
Okay.
But my mom, on the other hand, whoa, on the day of the funeral, she said to me, all of Charlie's relatives, they
Yeah.
all looked on me as being Charlie's bastard child. So, overnight, I'm losing my wonderful dad. And I thought, if that's what they
Wow.
think of me, and of course it wasn't true, but you don't realize that at 19. You just think, what she's saying is gospel because you put your
Yeah.
parents on a pedestal.
Absolutely.
So I fell down a route of bulimia, and that was through because I was overweight as a child, and then sort of as I started to get some friends sort of later on in life, a lot of them were models because I've always loved beauty and nice
Sure.
things.
And you're a beautiful woman, both inside and out, Debbie.
Thank you. I wasn't always, and it is just a belief, isn't it?
I'm
And
sure you were, but you didn't believe it at the time.
no, no. And when you look at somebody like Madonna who reinvents herself, she can look completely different. So your face is
Yeah.
just uh, a palette that you can paint and change and
Yeah.
create any kind of a look. And one of my best friends, I
Mm.
learned from her, her belief is she feels beautiful because she was told it over and over by her
Oh,
parents.
yeah.
And I thought, how could I believe that? No, I don't think I could. 2 glasses of wine, I could start to believe it, And I thought, I've got nice hair. And I used to wear far too much makeup that would really, I thought it made my eyes look big. And,
Yes.
but I liked that at the time. And so after 2 glasses of wine, the critics shut up. And I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not too bad. So yeah, but because
Mm.
her and her girlfriends were like 7 stone 9 or 8 stone
Yeah.
1. I had actually lost my baby fat and I was 9.5 stone, but my internal dialogue was like, oh, you're still a fat bastard because you're a stone and a half
Wow.
heavier than them. Wow, if I
Yeah.
could my younger self talking to. And whilst my friend wasn't bulimic, she said whenever she went to her mom's, she'd have spaghetti bolognese, drink a load of water, gurgle, 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 and throw it up. And I thought, oh, I wonder if that's the answer. Oh God,
Wow,
years
interesting. Yeah,
bulimia, and it got hold of me because of the low self-esteem. If I was happy,
yes,
I wanted to do it. If I was sad, I wanted to do it. And I've worked with clients probably through my products and one-to-one, probably nearly 1,000 people now who are sort
yeah,
of with sort of eating disorders. And the answer to any eating disorder is to eat like a lean, healthy, happy person. So
mm,
none of this dieting stuff. It's like
yeah, yeah,
have what you want, just not all at once. Spread it over a longer time.
yeah,
Heal the emotional part. Lean, healthy, happy. The happy is the emotional part of,
yeah.
using food as a drug of choice to bury emotions and learning how to deal with people that, retains your own self-esteem because there's plenty of bullies out there, plenty of people who want to get off on pushing you down. And so,
Do you know what, Debbie? I mean, there's so much there. Wow, that I could ask you about. I'm going to go with the bullying thing
Mhm.
because Debbie has done a video called The Cat's Arse, and I watched it last night. And I was thinking this would make a brilliant video, a brilliant coping mechanism for bullying. Because especially with social media and influencers and all it is, maybe not the two girls at the airport. I don't think they would care if anybody tried to bully them. I'd be like, feck off, I'm gorgeous, it's your problem. But we know that bullying is a problem, especially for young people, because a lot of times they've lived their lives on social media, constantly looking for validation. Let's go back to the cat's arse. Can you explain that? Because I think it might be useful for the listeners.
Each time you say the cat's arse, my thoughts are, well, it's not the dog's bollocks, but
It
sorry.
could be the dog's bollocks. You choose.
Yeah. So it was a lady came to me for like weight loss, and the first session I said, is there anything that could stop you? And she, no, I've decided, she's 4.5 stone overweight and she wanted to get this weight off.
Yeah.
Anyway, she'd booked for a second session, and I expected her to come in and say, "Oh, yeah, I lost weight." But she come in, she says, "Oh, I haven't lost any weight at all." And I was like, "Oh, okay. What's happened?" And then she
Yeah.
said, "Well, I didn't tell you last time, but I'm going through a separation with my husband, but he's still living in the house. And for the last sort of 18 months, I was convinced he was having an affair. And he was just saying, 'You're nuts, you are. You're psycho. You're psycho. The way you go on, you're going to make me have an affair. Look at you. You're letting yourself
You're
go.'" So,
constantly criticizing her, constantly
yeah.
bullying her, abusive behavior, actually.
Yeah.
Mm.
And anyway, it came out that he was having an affair, but he was adamant that it happened because of her.
Of
You
course.
just,
Yeah.
yeah. And what was happening was he was coming home sort of in the evening and he was just looking at her and he was just being so horrible, you fat,
Wow.
ugly so and so. And she said, I was finding myself in the kitchen and I was just eating food to numb the pain.
Yeah.
We were trying to sell the house, but when anybody come round, he would say to them, it's great living here, apart from Tom. I mean, he's got the drums, but it's usually only till 1 a.m. on a Wednesday and sometimes on a Sunday. So he was just messing, and so I went back to what I learned, at the end of the hypnotherapy without
Yeah.
planting a suggestion. And I said, I'm sure with your creative mind, you could come up with something that's sort of funny and that'll sort this issue out 100%.
Yeah.
Previous to that, I'd said to her, with my mom and everything, I ended up forgiving her. I'm that sort, I forgive, I don't forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
She ended up living with us. They did say she would only live for 6 weeks, 6 years.
I remember you telling me that in the plane. I was like, what? I nearly needed a drink myself.
Yeah,
Imagine what it was like for you, Debbie. But
yeah.
so go back to the woman then.
Yeah. And so when Ollie, awful again with clients, sometimes if they've had a terrible parent, I said, well,
Yeah.
let's downgrade them. Don't call them mom or dad. What's their first name? And that's why I talk about Olive because, she wasn't really a warm mother at all. And when she'd talk, sometimes she deliberately wanted to hurt you. And so I'd sort of switch off and I'd look at her mouth moving and I'd imagine it was like a trout pout going. And so
Okay.
I wouldn't hear the words, but I would record them because I want to say to my husband later, oh, she's excelled herself today. This is what she said. And I'd see this trout pout, and the
Yeah.
thought was, last time I seen her mouth like that, it had a a hook in it.
Okay.
And so I'd said this to this lady and said about her creative mind had come up with something. Anyway, she come back the next week and she'd lost 4 pounds. She was delighted. And she says, "Oh my God," she said, "everything has changed. Everything has changed. It's fantastic. And I learnt it from my cat." And I, what?
Yeah.
Your cat? What? So you're going to need to elaborate. I am, you know. And she said, "Well, my cat was walking out of the room." And I said, sometimes their tail does this. And you don't mean to look, but like a second sort of expands itself and you're locked in. And she said, and then its bottom did that. And she says, and I was
Yes.
sort of transfixed by this, the cat sort of bum for a second. Anyway, later that day, her husband came home and he goes, "You ugly bitch." She
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
his lips were pursed. And she said, I just looked at him and I thought, "Oh my God, it's the cat's arse is talking." And she said, the more I didn't react, the more animated he got.
Yes.
She said she actually had to turn around away from him because she thought, how's he going to react if him, sort of
Yeah.
being like this? She thought
Yes.
she didn't know how he'd respond to her laughing in his face. Anyway, what happened a day or so after that? He said, "Look, we need to get this house sold. We need to move on." And I look at it, it's like a figure of eight loop because he could
Yes.
get away with his sport and he could control her.
Yes.
If she could sort of look at him and think, what? He couldn't get to her, so he'd lost.
Abs- Absolutely, Debbie. He'd lost that control.
Yeah.
He'd lost that power. So, folks, for any of you that have a bully in your life, whether it's a parent, whether it's somebody on social media, whoever that is, just imagine the cat's arse or whatever you want to come up with, as you say, in your creative
Creative.
mind. I love that, Debbie, because I love the way that you give the suggestion, but you encourage the person to come up with it themselves.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you can use, or the trout pout, or come up with your own thing, folks, where I love that word, downgrade somebody. Take them off the pedestal. If they're that sort of person, they shouldn't matter what they say and what they do. They shouldn't matter to you. So then it's to be able to take your own power back and imagine the cat's arse or whatever you want to do when they're having a go at you, that it doesn't affect you. Laugh at it internally and get yourself out of that situation so you're not playing that game.
And I think, was it Eleanor Roosevelt said, nobody has the power to hurt you without your permission. And so, again, sort of
Yeah,
almost imagine, well, you can have that back tenfold because,
yeah.
I don't accept it. And when I got pregnant with my son at home, I was actually 5 months pregnant before I told my mom. I was wearing baggy stuff. She didn't even notice. But
Okay.
I kind of took myself back a bit because at the time, me and Phil, we weren't married. I mean, we've been together over 30 years now.
Yeah.
But I knew she would say something along the lines, "or you're having a bastard," or something like that. She had just such a barbed
Wow.
tongue. And so I knew I needed to protect myself. And so, sort of, we ended up having a big row and I started bleeding. I ended up in
Mm.
hospital. And my husband's mom, sort of, she'd known all along I was pregnant. And I became quite vulnerable when I was pregnant because
Of
I'm
course.
very, very
Yeah.
strong and then quite vulnerable and
Yeah.
also thinking I wasn't sure I wanted a baby because she would say to me, "You couldn't look after anything," and also you put me through hell, sort of giving birth and stuff. And when I was
Yeah, but
sick,
your mother's behavior was
mhm,
disgusting, actually. Sorry, but I hope you don't mind me saying that, Debbie.
yeah,
It's abusive behavior. Like, I'm so sorry that you went through that. And I can see why you don't call her mum, why you describe her as a first name, because her behaviors does not represent a loving mother.
no, no. But I'm glad I went through it. I wouldn't want to go through it again. Um, but
Okay,
I,
I bet.
yeah, I look at things and actually I'm going to share this because
Hmm.
with all the rape gangs and the stuff that's going on in the media,
Yeah.
well, I grew up in Shropshire and I'd walk into Wellington, which is in Telford. There used to be sometimes this weird Asian man. I'd be looking at shoes or something in
Mm.
the shop, and this presence was here, and he'd go, "I'll buy you those." I go, "No, thank you, no, thank you."
Okay.
And And the one time I went into Wellington and I was in Woolworths and he followed me into Woolworths and I saw the neighbours.
Wow.
I said to the neighbours, he's following me and what have you. And they said, oh, he is, isn't he? And then they said, do you want to come home with us? And yes, please. And I think he was waiting, thinking that I'd separate and he'd carry on following me.
Wow.
Anyway, they gave me a lift home. The only thing is I never told my parents, and the reason being I used to get beat up at school. I'd come home and I say to my mum, oh, Philip Griffiths has, beat me up again. And then
Yeah.
people don't do things for no reason. You must have done something. You must have done something. So, and so I just kept it to myself.
Yeah.
A lot of times when I work with people who've gone through rape and stuff like that,
Mm.
we do a thing called change personal history.
Okay.
So what we want to do is not step back into it because it was bad enough the first time.
Yeah.
We change it. And so we do like a double disassociation. There's a screen there and you're
Hmm.
sat here, then you float out and there's a screen up here. So you're
Okay.
looking at the back of yourself.
Yeah.
And what I do is say, before it happened and then after when you were safe, we want to watch it forward as quick as this. Zip forward, zip back, zip forward, zip.
Yeah.
And now this time, what we want to do is watch it. But this time, we perhaps want to give you either your older self there as a big sister or what have you.
Yeah.
We want to give, some support there.
Yeah.
And the other thing, maybe we want to give the perpetrator self-esteem.
Okay.
And then as you watch it play out, there's no way it can play out the same. And so I do lots of variations for that because then
Yeah.
what it means is you kind of know what happened, but that was your one reality and it's causing you a lot of trauma. But then you
Yes.
realize, well, it could have happened this way and it could have happened this way. So the common denominator isn't that person, it was the situation. So it allows the person then to let go of the emotion. Well, I had a thought the other
Mm.
week and I was thinking, oh my goodness, if I hadn't had such a strong father who loved me, I could easily have been a victim
Yeah.
because if I hadn't had a male person who taught
Yeah.
me values and then this Asian person was trying to buy me shoes, I could have seen myself as a young child. Really? You'd buy those for me?
Yeah. Almost grooming when you see
Yeah.
them with gangs now.
Yeah, yeah. And when that thought come to mind, I thought, oh my God, another thing my wonderful dad did for me. Just his presence and oh, I'm gonna be crying.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that, Debbie. Let's just pause for a moment. I can see how much that means to you. And,
yeah,
it's so powerful when people do share their own stories because what we're saying here is we don't know who's listening to this, but
yeah,
what we're really highlighting here is be mindful of the parents you've had growing up or the caregivers or whoever you've had because they mightn't have been the loving parent or parents that you needed. And
yeah,
as a result of that, that may have affected your self-worth where you can be easily groomed or you can be vulnerable. Well, unfortunately, other people can take advantage of that. So it's really important to know that there is help out there like hypnotherapy, like talking therapy that I do. And I love that difference, Debbie, because it's true that not everybody wants to talk about it. If they want to talk about it, they're coming to me. If they
yeah,
don't want to talk about it, they're going to you. Do you know what I mean? I love being able to offer different types of therapies here because no two people are the same. But again, I just want to highlight on what you said to me. You had a dad that was really loving and made you feel worthy.
yeah,
It's so important. Like that's our birthright for all of us to feel worthy. It's our birthright to feel good about ourselves and to live a happy life. So if you're not feeling that, it's so important to be aware of that and to put yourself in healthy environments. Does
yeah.
that make sense, Debbie?
100%, 100%. Yeah. And,
Yeah,
we can always learn and grow. And again, as I started with like my little mastermind group when I was working with clients, I've used
yeah,
that over and over. And sometimes I call it a mastermind, sometimes I call it a healing circle.
yeah,
Often when somebody comes with their issue, they feel alone, they feel that nobody
yeah,
can understand them. And
yeah.
the kind of hypnotherapy I use is like from Milton Erickson, and when somebody came in, he would say, "Oh, that's interesting. My friend John had a similar experience, XYZ. Here's a solution," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what would happen is people would be thinking, "Oh, when's the therapy starting?" But that was a template that would go in, bypass the conscious mind of saying there's somebody else the same as you, but they got
Yes.
better. So it's working on so many layers. If
Yeah.
somebody was a very logical sort of analytical thinker and would say, well, that might have worked for your friend John, but it wouldn't work for me. Milton would say, no, I'm not saying it would work for you. I'm just saying that that's what happened with them. And I'm sure with your creative, intelligent mind, you'd come up with something far superior than that. It was always like a
You
win-win.
wouldn't play it into their ego.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ah,
I love that because, it means that you can kind of weave but help
can.
people to find a solution. And
You can.
often I think, you're just having a conversation, but you're not. You're planting through stories and,
Yes.
sort of, and I always remember watching this program. Gosh, how old was I? I wasn't very old, in my 20s. And it was about sort of interviewing like this prostitute and stuff, and
Yeah.
this girl, she'd been beat up by a pimp and everything, and you
Wow.
know, she said that, well, she said, I thought that's how men showed love. Oh my God, that was like a knife in my heart.
Yeah.
I was raped when I was 13,
Oh,
but it was by a lad that was only a year older than me. Again, I
that
couldn't
doesn't make it okay. That's
no, I
child to
couldn't tell
child
my
abuse.
mom
Yeah.
because God, I got blamed for that, and also,
Yes. Yeah.
and I was mixed up because I was only like 13, and I was thinking, does that mean he likes me? That he wanted to do that? Does it? It was so confusing, and this
Yeah.
is what I find as well. If I've worked with somebody who's gone through like childhood abuse, and it's
Yeah.
from a trusted uncle, there's various different kinds of abuse. And so if a trusted uncle has made a beeline and, oh, you're so beautiful, and
Yeah.
we're sentient beings, and the child goes, oh, I like that, because we like touch.
Of course. And the
And then
attention and yeah.
and what happens, if he's not forced himself on, or he's just done oral or something like that, and he gets off on pleasuring the child,
Yeah.
that child as an adult doesn't know how to deal with that, because they're like, well, who the hell am I if I enjoyed this? And
Oh,
you have to say, well, look, you were the child,
yeah.
this was the adult. He went beyond the boundaries.
Yes.
And again, giving different sort of changing the history of how many different ways it could have played out,
Yeah.
allow the hold that that had on people to be, sort of one of 10 possibilities. And that one, you think, oh, I don't want to go back to that. That's,
Yeah.
well, but never see that uncle again, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Do
so
you know
yeah,
what, Debbie? It's so sad. It really kind of reminds me of how much, when we look at generation behaviors, when we look in the 70s and the 80s, the 90s, such a lack of education around what are actual healthy relationships, what's okay, what's not okay. I'm so glad that there's so much more now around consent and what is okay and what's not okay. I think that was needed years and years ago because people got away with so much. And go back to your example, Debbie, like unfortunately, families, they blamed their own children. Well, it must have been you. You must have done something to instigate that. So you'd know where to go with that. So it is so important. You don't spend the rest of your life holding that bit in your body that you
yeah,
can go
yeah,
to you can go to me, go to a different type of therapist, whatever you want, to work on that stuff that happened to you that wasn't okay.
yeah, and yeah, yeah.
Wow, Debbie. Oh, will you think of everything that we've covered so far?
I know.
Wow, wow. And just to let the listeners know that Debbie does a lot around addiction. So I was on your YouTube channel. I was looking at some of the fabulous videos that you've got on there. There's so much you offer, Debbie. You're so multi-talented.
Yeah. Although I don't work with smoking. Although I end up working with smoking when I've sorted a client out with something else, because
Yeah,
I decided early in my career. I remember we did something with, it was on the October some stop smoking.
Yeah,
I can't remember
yeah.
what it was, and it was in London. And Paul McKenna had hired a theatre, and we thought we were going to have 200 people. We actually had 800, so we had to get
Wow.
print these non disclaimers that this isn't, this is sort of education because
Yeah, 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 yeah.
somebody had tried to take Paul to court because they said that the hypnosis show had caused his schizophrenia, but actually he'd been to about 10 other hypnotherapy shows. It was just
Yeah.
Paul had the money, and crikey, thank goodness the judge saw the truth
Yes.
of it, because if
Yeah.
that had have gone the other way, the world would be a completely different place now, if they'd sort of done that to sort of hypnosis.
Absolutely, Deborah. And I love like our chat today. And I hope it really demystifies us. It shows how important hypnotherapy is, how helpful it can be. I love the fact that you're dealing with the deep-rooted stuff as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, I hope that that all comes across. Yeah, mentioning Paul again. What's he like then? Because obviously we see him on the TV. So go on then. What's he like? Of course, you're going to tell me all nice stuff, aren't you? You're not going to say, well, actually, and excuse my French, he's an arsehole.
He's, he- he's like, sometimes a lot of times he's a bit like a teenage boy, and he loves
Yeah.
he loves jokes.
Oh,
He's he is, and you just love Paul. He's just,
oh,
yeah, he's got a good heart, and he
yeah.
cares, and he's had his struggles, and yeah, and he's with Kate now, and Kate is
Oh,
like his yin to his yang, and she
yeah.
keeps him in places. So, sometimes people.
I think sometimes we all need somebody to kind of keep us in place.
Yeah, but he absolutely adores her, and it's
Oh,
lovely to see because, I think people who are in this personal development, you're always looking to learn and grow, and he's always looking to be the best husband that he can be
yeah.
and show up for her, and it is just lovely to see, and yeah, so
Oh no, it's fabulous. It was fascinating chatting to you on the plane and hearing the different stories and the live shows, and it's wonderful to get an insight into that. Because obviously I do my own shows and stuff like that, but it's very much my show is like a one woman show. It's not like I have a whole team. I do have supervisors and counselors on hand if anybody does fall apart, because you all it was like I signed a contract recently because I've got my next mental health show on the 17th of October. So this is at the Litchfield Garrick, and this is my 10th anniversary show. And it was so funny. They said, "Oh, Sheila, should we put in about a trigger warning?" And I'm thinking, it's all triggers. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
A mental health show. I wonder will there be triggers? Yes, the whole thing will be triggering. But actually, I make a point of people who are sad, angry. That's good. I want feelings, you know?
yes, yeah.
But kind of so look, I know we're coming towards the end of our chat today. So obviously you've loads of experience there, but you've learned so much both personally and professionally. Your top three tips. Your top three tips for happiness, self-worth, just whatever, Debbie.
Write somewhere, I wonder what miracles will happen this week, and just keep looking at it. Two, I often say to people to keep a happiness success journal or a box where you just put in good things that have happened and little notes to it, because you're capturing. I'm not a fan of these, you wake up every morning and five things I'm grateful for. That feels
Yeah.
forced. But if you've got like a happiness gratitude journal or a box,
Yes.
then you notice, oh, today has been fantastic because of this. I'm writing that
Yes.
in. Or that person, that joke, I've got to capture that joke and stuff. And so you're saying to the brain, this is worth capturing. This made me smile. This made me laugh. This made me feel grateful.
Yeah.
And you've got that in there. So anytime you have an off day, then you might not build the bridge to feeling happy, but you can look and you can think, oh, I'm just actually having an off day.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of training the brain to go in the right direction.
Yeah.
The third thing is, I would say, eat food as close to nature as possible, because food is a drug. And most of the stuff that's in the supermarket is highly packaged, full of chemicals,
Yeah.
and it's drug food rather than healthy food. And so
Yeah.
healthy food that you can have, the more your mind functions, and more fruits, vegetables, salads
Yeah.
prevents disease. There's no money to be made in promoting that, but yeah, if you keep
Yeah.
yourself healthy and happy, and just always be open to learn and grow. And I suppose one question is, what do I need to learn to make it better? And
Oh, that's a great question. What do I need to learn to make it better?
your brain might not get an answer straight away, but if you're obsessed with that, then you won't need therapy. You won't
But
need
no,
us.
knowing your highly creative brain, you will come up with your own solution for that.
Yeah.
Maybe not now, but in the middle of the night, that podcast is woken me up. I know the solution.
And I don't know whether you'll notice it today, tomorrow, or next week. It's a presupposition. You're going to notice it. I just don't know when.
Well, do you know something, Debbie? I think it was a wonderful miracle that we happened to be sitting beside each other on the plane, laughing about those girls.
I just wish we'd have known each other before, because we'd have gone up to them and said, can we do what you do? Are we too old? Do you think we could do? Have I got a pout? Do that. Show me how you do
You
it.
would do the trout pout.
Oh, whoops, up they come.
Okay, it's definitely time to bring this to an end because I can only imagine what way this is going to go. So, Debbie, thank you so much for being on today. Tell me, how can people get in contact with you if they want to come to you for hypnotherapy?
Okay, it's debbiewilliams.co.uk. But I would say also go on to my Debbie Williams NLP YouTube channel, because
Yes.
there's lots of free stuff there.
Excuse me, yeah.
And I've got, I'm just rebuilding the shop, but I've got over 34 products, and I'm quite proud of,
Oh,
sort of the one. It's a multiple product lean for life, and I've had people with bulimia and eating disorders in New Zealand, America,
oh,
messaged me, and they've said that this has really made a difference,
oh,
training them to eat as a lean, healthy, happy person. So
yeah.
sometimes if you can download a product and listen to it over and over, it's a lot cheaper than coming to a therapist. And
Are you trying to put me out of work here, Debbie? I bring you on as a guest and I lose all my clients. Thanks, Debbie.
well, no, what I love the fact when I do work with people, it's like sometimes, a lady the other week, she came for weight loss and she got a problem with chocolate addiction. And I said, look, I could have spent half an hour sorting this out, but actually I've got a product. Are you happy to do the work at home and schedule in like an hour as if you're having a session with me? So you're not going to be disturbed, but go through the recording. And she was, so that means I've got an extra half an hour to deal with it. It's not like we're going to run out of clients. There's so many people messed up.
Definitely not. And there's so many people that are needing support at the moment. And that's why I find it so important to introduce lots of different types of therapies. I love that idea. And one therapy might have worked at one stage in your life, but you might be ready to try a different type of therapy now. So I love that. I think it's about helping each other at the end of the day, because we all want the same outcome. And that's just to be able to live happy, healthy lives, and not give a shy what other people think.
Exactly.
Okay, listen, Debbie, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. And listeners, if you want to make any comments, please do. We hope that you have found our conversation helpful. So thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Counsellor Convos with Sheila McMahon. If you've enjoyed this episode, consider checking out her YouTube channel or pop on her website, mindmanagementforyou.com.